Mic check, 1 2 1. Volume check, 1 2 1. Yeah, no, volume check, volume 2 1. That's close enough. Let's put Lube Logger on a Synology NAS, and this is a self-hosted, open-source, unconventionally named vehicle maintenance records and fuel mileage tracker. So to put this on our NAS, we're actually just going to click on the link to their GitHub repo, and I just need to open up 2 files here. So if I scroll down, the first file after all the folders is called .env. So I'm going to open that guy up in a new tab. And then I need to scroll down and find their dockercompose.yml file. And I will just going to open you up, not even in a new tab. And I've got the 2 files that I need. So now I'll go back into my Synology NAS. And then I'm going to click on, I need to make sure I have 2 programs. I need Container Manager, which if you don't have, you can just come up to File Manager and type in Container Manager. And it should show up. If it's not showing up, it's not officially supported on your model of Synology NAS, but maybe Google around and see if other people have gotten it to work. And then the other program you need is just a text editor. So you can just type in text and grab the official Synology text editor. That's right, it's official. So let's start by going to Container Manager. I'm going to scoot this over to the right because we're going to have to open up FileStation soon. And I'm going to click on Project, Create, and then project name, I'll type in Lube-Logger. And for path, let's make a folder for all these files to live in. So I'm going to click on FileStation, and then Docker, which you should have a Docker share when you install Container Manager. It should make that for you. And I'm going to click Create Folder, and I'm going to call this Lube Logger. You could call it anything you want, though. If you don't want to keep saying Lube Logger, you could call it Car Tracker, whatever you want. All right, so I've got that folder. Now, under Path, so if I go back to Container Manager, under Path, I'm going to click Set Path, Docker, Lube Logger. So I've got that folder. And now for source, I'm not going to upload a Docker Compose. I'm going to create a dockercompose.yml file. And to do that, I'm going to come back to that GitHub page and copy all of this text. So I can just click this little icon here and it'll all be copied. Or you can go old school. You can highlight it and copy it. So I'll paste that in here, and I've got to make a couple of changes. Actually, I got to make like 9 changes, I think. There's a couple changes, but it's very easy. So under Services App, there's a section called Volumes. Volumes used to keep persistent data, so there's that. Basically what we want to do is put these in a folder where we know where it is. So this program will run as is, but I want to make a couple changes here. So for volumes, you can see it's kind of laid out Word, colon, and then what looks like a path to a folder. And that is what it is. So on the left-hand side, because the left-hand side is just one word, colon, that means it's going to create what's called a Docker volume. And that's going to be a little bit trickier to back up for us because it kind of just puts it in a folder that's not easy to get to. So instead, I'm going to make these all into what are called bind mounts instead of Docker volumes, which is just a fancy way of saying a path of a folder. And to do that, I'm going to do a little trick here. I'm just going to type in // and I'm going to do that in front of all, I think it's 7 of these Docker volumes. So / data, documents, images, temp, log, and keys. And I debated whether I was going to say all of those or not, and I did it, and I regret it. So this / is actually just shorthand for wherever I'm at /config or / data. So that's all that this period is doing. And where this file is going to be is right up here. So Docker Lube Logger. And this won't work though because these folders don't actually exist. So we need to make them. So I'm going to go into FileStation and I'm going to go into the Lube Logger folder and I'll make all these folders. So I'm going to go back and forth here because I just want to copy and paste. These names have to be exactly the same. If not, it's not going to work. So I'll put in config, and it's a huge deal because if it doesn't work, then, well, you just have to make the folders the right name. It's actually very easy. It doesn't really matter. Create folder, so we got config, data, and then I want a folder for documents, and then images. So we got an images folder, and then a folder for temp. I don't know what that temp stuff is, but it's there. So we got a temp folder and then log. That sounds important for a program called Lube Logger. And then the last one is just a folder called keys. And we've got all the folders that we need in here. So you should have 7 different folders. So I'm going to come back into Container Manager. And then I want to change the ports. So when you're changing ports, this is going to be how you access Lube Logger. You're going to type in the IP address of your Synology NAS, colon, and then whatever port number you put in here. So right now it would be http:// IP address of your Synology NAS, colon, 8080. But I'm going to change that because 8080 is a pretty common one, and I don't want to run into any conflicts. So I'm going to type in 2002, which is a little Top Gear trivia for you Top Gear fans out there. And then the last thing I'm going to do is delete this whole volume section. Don't need that anymore because we don't have any Docker volumes. And that is it. So this will now up and run, and it will give us an error because we don't have a .env file, but we're going to make that here in a second. So I'll click next, and then I am not going to set up a web portal, so I'll click next. Start the project once it is created is checked, and I will click done. And then it's going to give me an error that's saying, you don't have an env file. You idiot. So let's go back into File Station, and in our Lube Logger folder, I'm going to click outside of it and then back into it, and we should now have a compose.yaml file. I'm going to double click that guy, and I'm going to click File, Save As, and I'm going to save this as a .env file. Check it out. We've got our .env file, and I can delete all this stuff because this is now the env file. So let's open up that env file from GitHub, and I'm going to copy all of this stuff here. If you don't have this open, remember it's just back in their GitHub page. It's just that first link, that .env. I'm going to paste all of that in here, and I'm not going to make any changes. There is some documentation on this on their website. So if I go back to lubelogger.com, docs, getting started, they've got a little bit of an explanation here, so that might help you. This is more for changing languages and stuff like that, which I think you can just change in the app, so I don't think that's a big deal. And if you need to set up email things, I'm not exactly sure what it's for, but the description makes it sound like it is for configuring multiple users. That is something that you could do, but I'm not going to go over that because I don't need it, and it looks kind of complicated, and I don't know that I'd be able to figure all this stuff out very quickly anyways. So back to the Synology NAS. That's a great excuse, right? Because I'm lazy is what I'm saying. And I'm just going to file, save that env file, and we are good to go. So now I'm going to go back to Container Manager, and all I have to do is under the Project tab, I'll right-click Lube Logger and then click Build. So it's going to pull all the app files. It shouldn't take too long. Lube Logger is not too large. And hopefully we get an exit code 0, which means you were a success. There we go. Exit code 0. Project Lube Logger was successfully built. If you walk away from your computer, you probably didn't see that message. And now let's access Lube Logger. So like I said, you need to type in HTTP and not HTTPS, because if you type that in, that will not work. So just HTTP:// the IP address of your Synology NAS, 2002. Or if you used a different number, so if I go into the YAML configurations, whatever number you put here to the left of 8080, that's where you need to go. So let's try that out. If you don't know the IP address of your Synology NAS, you can just come up here to Widgets. Make sure you click this plus sign and System Health is checked on, and it should be under LAN 1. It's probably going to say 192.168.1. something. That should be your Synology NAS's IP address. If that's not working, you can check the other LAN ports, and it might be one of those addresses. So let's try. So in my case, I'm going to type in 192.168.8660:2002. Hey, check it out. Lube Logger's up, and it shouldn't take long to load, so it should pop up for you pretty quickly. If it's not working, again, make sure you're not typing in HTTPS. Use HTTP. And also make sure that if you're using Synology's firewall, you now have to open up port 2002. And the other thing too is, remember for this is not accessible outside of your home network. So if you are trying to use that IP address, that does not work outside of your home network. If you're at your friend's house or the coffee shop or whatever, not going to work. So just make sure that you're at home on the same network as your Synology NAS. But here you go. We're in Lube Logger. And Lube Logger is great. I think it kind of builds on the previous car apps because there's one called Hammond and another one called Clarkson. I like the way that this one kind of lays out the information and you get bars and graphs. So I'm going to go to settings real quick. You can check on dark mode. That's a pretty good one to do. If you're in the UK or you need to use different measurements, maybe you're on the liter system, I think you can make all those changes here. And you can even change the default tab. So if you're mostly concerned with fuel, you can actually make your fuel consumption the home page instead of the dashboard. So a lot of cool customization options on here. I'm going to really quickly set up some stuff. So let's just add a new car. This is totally useless, by the way. If you got this to install, you're pretty much done. Let's just say that I've got a toy. Oops, having a little keyboard problem. I am not having a keyboard problem. I'm having a I'm stupid problem. It must be an enter the year, not the make. So let's do 1985, and then Toyota Corolla, license plate AE86. And then for tags, I'm just going to type in Toyota and hit enter, and I've got a tag, add a new vehicle. There we go. Got a new vehicle added, and if I click in here, I can add service records, repairs, upgrades, fuel. If I add here, I'm going to add in a couple little things real quick, and you can see how this works. All right, so added a couple things in here, just 2 fuel fill-ups and an oil change. But check it out. You know, you've got a little graph showing what you're spending most of your money on your car. You can, I think, yeah, those numbers look like it's the cost that you've spent on the total. You get a little by the month chart here. So yeah, and you can even update. I think you can actually attach you can attach documents as well. So if you wanted to just take a photo of a receipt and put that in here, you can attach that and that's in here. And the really cool thing too is they've got a great backup option. So I go to settings and then make a backup. Let me pop in a folder and show you what it backs up. If I were to go to backup, so you can see, hey, I've got config and data, and I think it will also back up your documents and stuff too. So it's gonna put those folders in here, and those folders should look familiar because we go back to Synology. I'm gonna close out of you and go into the Lube Logger folder. Remember, we got this config and data folder. So what that means is, let's say you back this up to Google Drive and one day your Synology NAS goes down and you need to get a whole new Synology NAS. That's a pretty bad day. But you could just bring those folders back in here and relaunch Lube Logger, and you'd be good. You'd still have all your information from before. So I think that's a really nice way of them having a backup system. You could also just use Synology's backup stuff like snapshots and hyper backup. Those are probably going to work better because they're more automated, but I think it's cool that they have that in here. But yeah, that's how Lube Logger works. Because this tutorial is a little short, a little bit easier than the last Jellyfin one, I kind of wanted to walk you through how this works if you were trying to use the instructions, because the hope in a lot of my videos is that not only are you learning how to install this, but maybe you can use instructions for other Docker programs and install that on your NAS without needing to wait for me to come up with a tutorial video that is ridiculously long and stupid. Without waiting for me to come up with a video that is, you know, long or doesn't make any sense. So let's go to Lube Logger's official website and see what they say. I were to click on, lubelogger.com, and then I come down to, I think they've got a section on getting started. Yeah, where to download. So they're telling you how to put it up here. So the first thing it says here is you can download their Docker image. To pull it, you're going to run this command. So this actually happens in the Docker Compose file. They say check out the Docker Compose, check out their GitHub repository for the Docker Compose YAML and env file. So that's what we did. We just copied all that text and manually made the YML file as well as the env file. So that's how we got those onto our Synology NAS. This section right here, check it out. If we come into Container Manager and look in the YAML configurations, you can see services app and then image. That link is the same as this link here. So when we run the Docker Compose file, it actually does this for us. So it does the pull and gets all the files. And then for it to start up, you'll see this in a lot of Docker instructions where it says you need to type in Docker Compose up. First off, if you're using a newer version of Docker Compose, it won't be Docker-Compose, it'll be Docker space Compose. Second, you don't need to worry about that on a Synology NAS because if I stop this guy here and close you out, I'm going to go to Project. If I right-click on Lube Logger, if I click Start, that's basically what that's doing. It's doing that Docker Compose up command for us. So I'm going to close out of here. And I think Synology uses a pretty old version of Docker, so it might be using that Docker-Compose command. And then last, it says to navigate to the URL the service is listening on. So it lists this as the default. Notice they're using HTTP and not HTTPS. And you can see they say localhost. So localhost is actually whatever machine, it's going to give you the IP address of the machine that you're running on. So you've got your Synology NAS in your home, and you're trying to access it, let's say on your laptop. If you type in localhost :8080, it's actually going to use the IP address of your laptop and not the Synology NAS. So that's why we need to type in the IP address of the Synology NAS. And then it's :8080. So this uses that first port that we had changed. And the reason that we changed it is because 8080 is actually pretty common on a lot of Docker Compose files. So I don't want you to run into, you're using someone else's tutorial and they're using 8080 and then it conflicts and you're not sure why. All you'd have to do is change that first number in the port. So if that doesn't make sense, let me go back to the Container Manager, Project, double-click Lube Logger, and then YAML configurations. If I go to that port section, just remember the one to the left is the one that you changed. That is the host port. And the one on to the right, that's for Docker. You don't have to worry about that guy. So, and this one to the right, that can be the same. You'll see it. It'll be 80 or 443 or 8080. Those are pretty common in a lot of Docker Compose files. But don't worry about what it is to the right. To the left, that's how you're accessing it. So that's why we changed it up a little bit. And yeah, so that is how you put Lube Logger on here. If you wanted to access Lube Logger outside of your home, which I imagine you probably do, if you're getting gas or something, that might be a good time to use this app. You're going to want to learn how to use something like a VPN. You can use something like Tailscale to VPN in your Synology NAS and access it that way. Or you can also look into what's called a reverse proxy. Synology also has a DDNS thing that you can use, but yeah, that's a little bit out of scope in this video, but that's a way of looking it up in order to use Lube Logger outside of this. But you can also just save your receipts and then add that stuff later. But yeah, one day I'll do a little reverse proxy explainer video, and hopefully that'll help some of you guys out. But yeah, hopefully you were able to install, and good luck to you.